Our next speaker is Lara. Lara, she is a Flutter and Dart GDE. She's an Android developer and speaker as well. And I found on her Twitter that she has an amazing dog. And she's gonna talk about Webviews and Flutter. So hi, Lara.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, my dog is Lily, but she's not here in the room. Otherwise, it would be very noisy during the talk. So,
yeah, the stage is yours.
Okay, cool. Let me take a look at this. Cool. So this works. Awesome. Yes, so welcome everyone. I hope you've been enjoying the talk far. My name is Lara, as it's been said already. I'm an Android developer. That's my professional work, daily work, and I'm based in Berlin, in Germany. And I'm very glad to be here today with you. So you might be wondering why I want to talk about Webviews, probably because you don't feel that it's the most exciting thing in the world. I have to say that I haven't met anyone that is excited about Webviews. But the thing is that they got my attention in the past to know how it worked. I had many questions like, are they using the native view? Are they recreating everything in Flutter? And when I initially gave this talk a year ago, many things didn't work. But just some days ago, a new release on Flutter, like the release 1.20, happened. Contains a new rendering system, and it's very exciting because it's very promising, and it looks like this is gonna help to fix the many issues that the Webview had. So without further ado, let's have a look at the fascinating world of Webviews together. So first of all, what's a Webview? A Webview is a browser that is bundled inside a mobile application. Using a view allows mobile applications to use web technologies, let's say HTML, JavaScript, CSS, etc., to display its content. On Android and iOS, the Webview are like any other UI components, like text views or buttons. Just they are like a mini browser inside your application. For example, you can use them to display something that already exists, so you don't have to implement it already again natively. Let's say to show a third-party website to confirm a payment for PayPal, or to show some static content like the FAQ. No one implements an FAQ and API for that because you can already show what you have on the website. It's nothing more than that. So people even use Webviews to bundle full websites inside applications. But we are native developers, right? And we do not do that here. Wink. And what about Flutter? On Flutter, a Webview is a widget. It does not come bundled in Flutter SDK by default, so you have to import a plugin. The Flutter team published the Webview plugin that provides a Webview widget that you can find in the pub.dev website. This plugin is still considered a developer's preview because it relies on the Flutter's mechanism for embedding Android and iOS views. It is still still a developer's preview. How do you use the plugin? You declare the package on your spec YAML file, like any other dependency, and you synchronize, you get the package, and it will be ready already for use on Android. On iOS, you have to do a step extra, which is to add a key in the info.list file, but you can find the information in the documentation. Now, how has the Webview been implemented in Flutter? The Webview on Flutter has not been re-implemented in Flutter or Dart. they did not create a new Dart WebKit, but instead, View widget uses the native platform with Webviews. On iOS, Webview widget uses is backed by the WebKit Webview, and on Android is backed by the Webview. And Flutter will be using the one that's corresponding to the platform where you are running your application in. But then, is it a widget? It uses the native web view and it renders the native view inside Flutter, just like another Flutter widget. So yes. And so how can we can the Flutter view widget render what it's being rendered already in the native view? And that's what I want to explain now. And that's what actually made me very curious about to understand how the rendering system works. So I focus on the platform because, as I said, I'm a developer and that's what I know. But the iOS implementation is just similar. It's the same. Just using different classes, and you will see later. But it's the same idea. So to understand this, what I did is to create a small application myself and to use the Flutter inspector. What I did is to create just a list of documentations to learn Flutter, and then when clicking on one of them, it will open the website inside the web view. To learn how the web view works, I use the Flutter inspector, and then I could see the widget tree. And that's what you can see on the left side of the screen. In our example, in this example, we have a material application symbol with a scaffold and contains two things. One is the app bar, which corresponds to the action bar on top, and then the full the web view, spanning the whole body. So the web view is a widget, so it can be used as any other kind of widget. It does not have to take the whole screen. It can be as small as you want. So once you click on the web view in the Flutter inspector, you can see the journals, the tree below that. And there are many things here, but the important thing is the Android view. So now I'm going to show you a diagram step by step on how the rendering works. I'll be using blue for the Flutter side classes and for the Android side. And just a disclaimer, what I'm going to explain now is how the platform views rendering currently work. But it's a new mechanism, as I said before, since the latest Flutter release. And I'm going to compare it later on. So currently, this is how the rendering works. We have the Flutter Webview widget. The web view contains inside this Android view as a child, and as we saw in this vector. And the goal of the Android view is to embed an Android view, as the name says, in the widget hierarchy. The documentation says that this is an expensive operation. And then after you see the diagram and understand how this works, you will understand why. So on App Start, when you start your application, the framework registers the WebView plugin on the Android side, and it gives it ID to identify it. So when you need to create a native WebView, this plugin takes care of it. In our case, the Android view is contained in the Flutter WebView, and uses the same ID to tell the framework, please create WebView. Then the Flutter engine uses a WebView factory to create the actual native view. It creates an instance of Flutter WebView class on the Android side, which implements a platform view interface, and this contains the actual native WebView. So far, we have created the native WebView, and now we have to render it. On the native side, we have the platform view controller that takes care of the rendering of this native web view. But instead of displaying it on the screen directly, it renders it inside the graphic surface. Then Flutter is going to use that surface to draw it later in Flutter. And now on the back, back to the Flutter side. I know that this is very confusing, and I understand, but the whole idea is that the Android view on Flutter side will ultimately generate a render box, which is going to be used to draw things on the screen. And finally, this render Android view that extends render box is going to draw the native web view contents on the screen. And how is going to do that? How is doing this? So it uses the data that is contained in the native surface. To do so, it's accessing this surface via an ID. Remember, everything has an ID. So it already knows which value is copying. And the image data that we have is going to be drawn inside the render box. So what it's doing is reading the data from the surface and redrawing it in a render box. So you can imagine this happening for every frame, every change. So it's a very expensive operation. And do not worry, because if you were sleeping in this section, I have TLDL for you. If too long didn't listen. The Flutter Web View uses the native plugin to create an instance of the native web view. This one, the native web view, is rendered inside a surface. When with the surface data that it has, then it's read by a render Android view, which is extending my render box, and it's drawing it on the screen, essentially in where the native web view is showing. And guess what? That's the same process that it's been used to render any native views. For example, Google Maps. And this is how Flutter until now renders platform views. And what about iOS? As I said, it's very similar to Android, but instead of a render Android view, it uses the render UI kit view, which will render the surface created by the platform view iOS by the Flutter engine. And it also passes an ID to identify which graphic surface needs to be copied. As we've seen, Android view currently renders into a texture. And this is how the platform views have worked until now and still work. But now, from Flutter 1.20, released some days ago, just last week, if I'm not mistaken, there's a new way of rendering platform views called hybrid composition. By default, as I said, the WebView plugin, as per today, uses still the old rendering system. So it's generating the Android view and render UI kit view. But with hybrid composition, it's going to be using a surface and web view instead. So I tried to make a diagram on what is happening, but I'm still not sure of all the details. But so far, what I understand is that in hybrid composition, instead of Flutter creating an Android view, it creates an Android view surface that will also generate a render box ultimately. This Android view surface integrates an Android view, the native view, with the whole Flutter engine compositor, the semantics and subsystems, all the subsystems. So connects the Android with Flutter. Whereas Android view, as we said, embeds the Android platform view with the hierarchy using a texture. Now, what happened on the engine side? This is the box I draw there. well, we still have need some factory that will return the platform views and controllers. But what the engine does ultimately to show the native web view is necessary for me, I have to say. When I was reading the engine code, everything was C++ and everything seemed very like a magic happening there. So that's what I represented here with some magic. And from what I understand, Flutter takes the Android native web view and displays it directly on top. That's what I understood. Like if it was like a feature called picture in picture, like on YouTube, that you can have your YouTube video top of something else. It's like you have a window on top of some another. This is very new. This was just last week. So stay tuned to future documentation, technical deep dives on the topic. Some hybrid position. Please, someone do a talk on that because I want to learn as well. Now, so I talked about how the rendering and drawing of the web view works, but also how do we use it? And by the way, my keyword is animated container. The web view, which accepts a series of parameters, which are worth checking. I didn't write all the parameters, but I chose the most common of that I think. And just let's go through them. First of all, we have initial URL, which, as this name says, allows you set an initial URL to tell the web view which web to load on creation. But this is a parameter, an optional parameter, so you can provide this URL later if you want as well. And this is what you normally do. You try out the first web and see how it works. But you will sometimes notice that some websites don't load. And the thing is that it can be that the website requires JavaScript to run. So in that case, you will need to also enable JavaScript. And how you can do that, there's a parameter for that. There are two modes. There's the unrestricted mode. This means that we can only specify whether we disable or allow JavaScript to be run in our widget. And by default, it's disabled. So if a website that you're trying to load requires JavaScript, it won't load. The next parameter I want to show is a call called onWebView created. And as the name says, what is given you is a callback that it's invoked once the web view is created. The cool thing is that with this callback, you will receive a controller, the web view controller. And you can keep a reference to this controller so you can control the web view, basically. This controller exposes a bunch of methods like load URL, current URL, can go back, clear cache. These methods are asynchronous, meaning that you will have to do an async await call. And for example, how can we use one of those? I chose to show you quickly the reload. Very straightforward. Imagine you have a website that fails to load and you want to reload it. So easy thing to do would be, or the straightforward thing to do would be to add some button on your action bar to allow the user to reload, to have this reload action. So let's say we have a button, and inside the indexing block of the onPress, we can call the reload command. More things, interesting things on the WebView widget are the callbacks on page finished and on page started. These callbacks are received or are invoked when once the website is finish loading or start loading. So you could use them to, for example, change your UI and show and hide a progress bar, let's say, some animation. This is a very typical usage. If you have a web view inside the list view, it can bring you some problems when you're trying to scroll your list, right? Because if you want to scroll your list but your finger touches the web view, you will be scrolling the website inside your list. And it's not what you intended to do. And that's why you can provide gesture recognizers. I'm not going into detail with it because it deserves its own talk. But if you want to see this in action, I will recommend you very much to check on the Flutter Boring Show on YouTube, because they had to implement gesture recognizers for their Hurricane News app, and they added the web views to have previews of the news. And also, I added a link to a really nice article from Amy Fortuna where she's talking about them. Now imagine that you have your web view, the user clicks on a link and it opens Twitter, but your app is not like a Twitter application. You don't want the user to go into Twitter and then navigate and browsing within your application. You want to contain your users within your app and not allow them to navigate to some other. So to accomplish this with the WebView widget, you can define a navigation delegate. In navigation delegate, you given a URL that is going to be loaded, you can decide what you want to do, which navigation do you want to do. And this can have two values, prevent to block the navigation action, or navigate to allow it. And last but not least, from all the parameters I chose to talk to about, I want to show you the JavaScript channels, which is, I found it very fun. This basically allows you to, or allows JavaScript and Flutter to communicate with each other. So in the snippet you see here on the screen, you can see that the channels are set, but you can define more than one, but I only define one for testing purposes. So here I have one, which is a defined then within a variable. So I'm gonna define my JavaScript channel, which will have two properties. One is the name that will be used from the JavaScript side later to communicate with Flutter, and it's gonna be like a static class object that you can already use on the JavaScript side. And in this case, it's named Lara Demo. And then the second property is the onMessage receipt. And this is a callback that will receive the JavaScript message. The JavaScript message at this moment is only a string, can only be a string. And for this example, I'm just printing. So this is the Flutter site what you see on screen. How can you use these on the JavaScript side? On the website, when we call JavaScript channel, we use the name that we define, in my case, Lara Demo. And then we can call a method called postMessage and send a message, a string. And this is within in HTML is defined within the script tags. And this means that once you load the website, this script is gonna be run, right? And this script is gonna be run, the JavaScript is gonna be called, it's gonna send a message, and it's gonna be received by the application that you, where you are defining this. So potentially you could run some kind of logics or almost anything, I would say. Cool. So this is about all I can. I want to talk on the Webview widget. I also mentioned before that there were many limitations, and there are still limitations. We can do many things from basic navigation, interaction with JavaScript, but this is still an early stage plugin. It's not feature complete yet. So it's not, I will not say that it's production ready yet, because there are many limitations. It depends on what you want to do with it, for sure, but there are many limitations still. So the first thing everyone asks is always, what about performance? This is like the favorite question of everyone. Well, it depends. The Flutter team already tells you on the documentation that if you are rendering Android views, this is very costly. So they already knew. Other people will say that, well, it works flawlessly on phone, so I don't see any performance issues. You already saw how the rendering system works. You can imagine that this is costly. This is copying, the system is copying the native view data and redrawing it. So yeah, you can imagine this is costly. So be very mindful using Webviews or any other native view inside Flutter. And about issues that I've known until now, since until now and still now, since it's using the regular rendering system for platform views, this plugin has a lot of issues that are still there. Going from accessibility issues where, for example, the talkback will not work properly, issues with the keyword where you cannot change the language or it's not popping up in certain cases. Text selection is also not working properly. For example, if you select some text on Android on an input field, it does not show you the handles where it allows you to copy paste, select things. Yeah, animations are also sluggish. But as I said, there's this hybrid composition rendering system now, and there's some hope. There's already APR against Flutter where they are explaining the changes and all the issues that this is going to be solving potentially. And also here you have a link to the PR where they are in the new rendering system in the Flutter Webview plugin. So if you want to understand a little bit more how this works, go there and check it out. And also thumbs up to the PRs. I'm gonna let you know why later. And well, what's next? The Flutter team and the community are working on improving this plugin because there is a lot of interest on having it feature complete. It's not because we all love Webviews, but we need Webviews. You know, our product managers or project managers want to make some features that require Webviews, and we need them. You can find everything on GitHub. You can find the list of tasks, the projects, and whatever they are working on, the Flutter team, and all the issues that are open, everything. You can see, for example, that there is a PR open by Simon. He just gave a talk, and here you can see he's contributing also the Webview plugin. He's improving in this PR scrolling. And another interesting thing I found is that it's coming the ability to do the pinch to zoom on Android, but this is still open. Soon it will be there. Well, a few words about contribution. As you know, Flutter is open source, and so is the Webview plugin that I presented to you today. You already saw Simon contributing, and you can also contribute. While I was following all these issues and learning about Webview widget, I saw a comment from an engineer from Google that said something very interesting and that I saved and I loved. he said, we prioritize issues by the count of thumbs up on the issue description. That means that you can also contribute just by giving thumbs up in issues and features that you want and you find relevant for you, for your work. If you find you come across some issue and you see it's open, go and it's affecting you and it's important to you, go and give a thumbs up. This will help them to prioritize what to work on and what has more priority. As I said, everything is on GitHub, everything. So please go there and check it out, look for issues or improvements that you can think of as well. Submit pull requests if you can. And please, please, please give thumbs up to issues so they fix the most important issues. Giving thumbs up is also contributing. You will be able to find all slides now on my Twitter. If I'm not mistaken, I did it before. Thank you a lot, Flutter OnAir, for inviting me to today here to be with you all. And thank you all for listening. Thank you, everyone.
Lara, thank you for joining us. And we have like time for one super quick question. Can the Webview load cookies from the website?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't checked. Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I haven't worked with cookies, so I'm not sure right now how they deal with them. But yeah, good question. Good question. I can give it a quick look and let you know.
Okay, Lara, thank you for joining us. It was great and perfect timing.
Thank you.